A special place, not only just the history and the tradition, the football program, the school, but just the people that are here, and the kids that are here, and Coach Day, and having a chance to kind of have a little stability with my family, and it's hard when you got to move your family around, your kids, and going to school and all that. And we've just had an unbelievable experience settling into Columbus. Everybody's been so nice and welcoming, and it feels like home. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal for us to be, in a place where everybody's happy. It's really important.
Has being here exceeded your expectations for what you thought it would be?
That's probably a good question. I don't know if I set maybe expectations or not, or just kind of go in with the idea of hey, let's just try to do as much as we can to impact in the biggest way possible. So for me, that part of it's been amazing, to go in and have a lot of joy, to be around these kids and watch them work and grow and learn, and certainly going through the process this year with the draft and watching everybody get ready to go, and so excited for those guys and what's next, and for bright futures for them, and to get a new group in this year and kind of try to do the same thing. You just that's what it's all about, right? Trying to help and do whatever you can to make hopefully lives better for guys.
Last year
how much did you look at what your options or opportunities could be in the NFL versus wanting to?
Yeah. I mean, I think you look at all of it. There was. Look, I'm very blessed. I was very lucky. There was opportunities in college. There was opportunities in the league for sure. But we had just moved, and the family is a big part of it. And we got great kids here. Like I said, we got, Coach Day's got a great staff, great culture. So it wasn't something where it was like, you necessarily are looking to leave, but you do have to listen to those things that do come up, and I'm just glad that, we're able to just kind of get everything worked out.
Matt, last year you had to replace all those guys, but most of them were guys who've been in the program, at least knew it. This year's a little different, a lot of new transfer guys. How's the challenge different when you're trying to replace a whole new defense from all different programs?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So replaced a bunch of guys last year, but at least the guys were kind of in-house, so it was like they waited their opportunity, stepped up. And I think when that happens, certainly when you look at it from a team standpoint, culture and the way you do things and kind of the standard, all that stuff is set. We're just, picking it up with the next group. With as much new and, guys coming into the program for the first time, not only are you trying to catch them up on all the football scheme and all the rest of it, but you're also trying to catch them up on everything else. This is how we work. This is how we do things. This is the standard that we're looking for. This is how we practice. This is how we, prepare. This is what we do. We go to school. All of that now has to be also taught. So it becomes a lot, but that's, why you bring in the right guys that have that mental makeup that can do all that.
Matt, how fluid are you with your scheme here? When you lose all those guys, are you just looking for plug and play? We want to do the same thing we did last year, or do you sort of let the personnel kind of speak to you and then decide schematically what you want to do?
Yeah, that's really been more of what I've done. I would say in the last probably, 10 to 15 years, as I just learned through the course of the league, where your personnel will change, or you're, picking at the end of the draft versus the beginning of the draft, and you have to be fluid with all that. So it was great last year, get in, kind of take a look to see the guys that we had, because a lot of them hadn't played. Observe and say, okay, I think these guys can do this, and I think they can do that, and kind of put them in those roles, and then, just watch them blossom and go. We're really in that same space again this year, because the bodies are different, the look is different. So we're experimenting through spring ball. It's kind of good in college that we have, we have the spring practices, we're in pads already, and we're kind of seeing some of the fundamental stuff that we're working on. And then you still have work, before you get to training camp. So you have some time to kind of build, hey, this is what we figured out in spring practice that our guys can do. Now, how do we try to put them in those positions to do it?
You had three pieces last year with Caleb, Sonny, and Arvell, where just from a schematic standpoint, allowed you to just do a lot because of what they could do, especially with Caleb.
Yeah.
So when you look at that defensive back room, you look at that safety room, I don't know if it's possible to replace what he is. So do you feel like you have the pieces in there where maybe you can replace him in the aggregate?
Yeah, I don't think you ever replace a Caleb Downs or something. When you have great players, that's why they're great players. So, but to your point, I think what you try to do is okay, what do we have, and what can we carry over, and what maybe just isn't going to work for us this year. And I think we had those three great guys, but the whole pieces around them too. Even IGB's consistency outside, Jermaine being able to play outside, Caden Curry's flexibility was huge. K-Mac coming in and settling in the middle of the defense, and certainly Jalen McClain and him being able to step up into that role. So it was really, you got great pieces, but then it's the whole part that we put together. So we'll have to do that again this year, and we have a couple guys come back, certainly Jermaine and Jalen, and then look at those other pieces as we go and build the guys that were here, that we know what they can do, and then the new guys that are in, and try to see what that looks like.
Man, it seems like from the outside that Christian Laettner might be like the free agent of this group, where you go out, you land a piece that kind of fills a gap there. How much of the NFL experience do you lean on when you're trying to put a lot on a guy who's going to play like one of the middle linebacker spots? How much do you put on his plate early and throw him in the deep end and know that he can handle that for fall?
Yeah, I think for linebackers and safeties, right, kind of categorize them in the same space with the communication through the middle of the field. If they're just getting into the program where maybe they're an older player and things are going to go fast, what you try to really do is like, hey, let me just teach you this one thing first. Let me see how you handle that. Let you get a little bit of confidence with that first. Then let me teach you this next thing, and then you build it that way. I think if you throw all of it at them at once, sometimes, you're kind of like just doing a bunch of different things, but you're not real confident in one thing. I think the key is to get them confident in one thing first, so they know that, like, hey, I know I can do this, and then build from there. And certainly with the linebacker position, you have to do that because there is so much that kind of goes on there.
How vital is it to
you guys added Joe Kim? What do you like from him, and what do you think he can? What do you, I guess, do you want from him to kind of add to the staff?
Yeah, Coach Kim and I have known each other for a long time, and obviously worked together, and similar backgrounds and coaching trees and all that stuff. So he just brings a level of expertise. Not only to the line, defense, offensive line, skill players, a lot of combat drills, like hand-to-hand work, and he's just evolved his entire career over the last 30 years in the NFL of taking his background and then applying it to what that looks like with, the violence of the game and what that looks like in the NFL for sure. So to be able to get that here in college, I think is great. It just gives our guys that head start, and that's really the biggest difference. I talk to our guys about all the time. When you go from college to the NFL, the violence of the game up front, it's completely different, and so if we can get our guys headed in that direction now sooner, not only, does it help us currently, but it gives them that toolbox that they bring with them to the next level. So I think it's just a huge, addition for us.
How vital is it for James Smith to play a role? I mean, y'all, like you're talking about, you're losing Caden McDonald. Just finally came into his own and stuff, and James was talking about, just like Kenyatta was, like how much time he spent with you even, as opposed to past defensive coordinators and stuff. So you kind of cajole those guys along, right? I mean, how would you describe bringing those guys along?
Yeah, I love it. I mean, James is amazing. He's a great player, bright young kid, and just gravitates to football. So I love that. I love to teach the game, and he wants to learn. So I'm like, all right, come on, let's go. And just be around each other, because even it's not only just sitting there and you're watching tape all day long. Sometimes just having football conversations. Sometimes you're just giving that little nugget. And when you're around guys like James, who has this amazing personality, and you love being around him because he's got the tough exterior, but he's going to smile, and he's going to, bear hug him and all that stuff. And then, okay, now I'm in, and now we're talking ball, and he wants to be great. He wants to improve. And I think, his just thirst for that knowledge is, I love it. It's great. Mm-hmm. So him coming into the program, having that energy and a standard of how, he knows things need to be done, and holding everybody accountable. He's a confident guy that can come into a new building and say, no, this is how we said we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it. And we're going to hold each other accountable. So I love that leadership that he has about him too.
Matt, is there anybody who's stood out to you so far, that has that like on-ball, off-ball versatility that Ardell had that seems so key to what you guys did last year?
Not that we've done yet in spring ball. We haven't really done it. I think it's funny, I was having this conversation the other day about, how to attack different parts of off-season programs, right? And in the league, it's pretty structured. You got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and it's like a build process. I almost feel like in college, we have the off-season program, and then we actually go right into pads. We get into spring ball pretty quick. So you have that conversation with yourself, like, do you work scheme or do you work fundamentals? You try to do both, but the reality is we don't have so much time. And so much time in pads, working the equipment. So for us right now, it's really heavy focused on fundamentals, like, just getting all of that football technique work back into these guys. And then we'll start to look at some of the scheme stuff. So right now, fundamentals, try to see what they do, figure out what they can do, and then probably later in the summer work on what are the position flexes that we have.
With Garrett Stover having an off season like that, how does that change, or what does that do to a coach's thinking about it?
Yeah. Well, certainly, give him all the credit in the world, right? He came and blew the doors off the offseason program. It was awesome to watch him be able to do that, work real hard, change his body, change his just all of the work that he put into himself, but then really build the confidence behind it. I think a lot of it is look, we got a lot of really good players, but sometimes it's just you just need a little bit of that confidence about it, to go out there, because some of them have sat maybe for a year behind better players, and sometimes that happens. It takes a little bit of a while to get back into that rhythm of like, oh yeah, like I know how to, I can do this, and so that's the biggest part of it for me is he just has momentum of his confidence right now, and you see it. You saw it, we'll watch the tape today, but Tuesday there were some really nice plays in there where it was like, he probably wasn't making those plays last year. It was just kind of almost like the light bulb came out. It was a really savvy play. He had 3 of them that were really nice. So you love seeing that.
You talked about the Bills question, doing the fundamentals right now. How much easier is that in the back of your head to know that there's a lot of these guys that already have a baseline of your defense, where like you don't have to feel like you're ever behind because in an install because you're in year 2 now. Like, how much more comfort do you have with that?
I would say I probably always operate in a extreme urgency, like we don't have it mindset. I think that's kind of like, for me, I'm never, oh yeah, we're good. Like, I kind of actually always go back. Doc Rivers was great, when he was out in Boston with us and we would spend time together, and he had this whole thing with, they went through some different years with the Celtics, and he had this saying, it was like, don't let good get in the way of great, and it was like one of those things where the year before they were always trying to be great, and then the next year it was like, oh, hey, did you do this? No, I'm good. Did you do this? No, I'm good. And then, like, it was just a whole mindset of like, well, good will get in the way of being great. So like, we always want to be great. So let's just attack it like it's brand new every single time and make sure that we're really coaching those fine points.
What have you liked about the makeup of this cornerback room so far?
One of the things about our corners, and the same as last year now, we are competitive and we are fiery, so we're going to go out there and we're going to compete and we're going to battle, and we have to do that because we've got really good players lining up across from us over there. So I love that competitiveness and that fire that they bring. It's not only just on the field competitive, but it is a fire to learn and to get better and to really pay attention to the things that we're doing and try to improve every day. And that's, like I tell them all the time, you just have to be consistent because it's the only way we can tell if you've gotten better, right? So if you're consistent, I know if you've grown or you've slid backwards. If you're not consistent, then maybe I caught you on an up day, maybe I caught you on a down day. So I think that's the biggest thing for us, with all the fire and competitiveness that they have, just be consistent every day so we can see if we've gotten better.
Can you kind of give your first impressions of some of the other transfers, the other defensive linemen, and Terry and on the back end?
Yeah. I think all those guys are just indoctrinating themselves really well to what we're trying to do, and I think honestly they're just trying to learn the system. Earl, certainly great player at Florida State, guy that's always around the ball. I mean, this guy just had an instinct and a knack for being around the ball, so I love that ability, that football ability about him. So hopefully we can use some of that for sure. And Terry coming, Terry Moore, who really didn't play last year because of the injury. Watching him come back and see his movement skills has been really good for us to see up front. John doing a good job coming from Central Florida, big, strong guy in the middle. So really trying to see his skill set too.
Matt, I'm sorry. I got one more for you.
Yep. So Quay's another guy coming with James, from Alabama. Explosive power. That's what I would say so far with him.
Is Terry all the way back in terms of limited at all?
I mean, yeah, he's working. Everything's been. Yep. We're not doing anything to restrict any of that at all. We just reps. Out there in the field.
We'll finish with Doug.
When you evaluate last year's defense, you guys led the nation in the fewest points. You led the nation in giving up the fewest big plays. But you were like middle of the pack in havoc rate in the Power 4. You were 75th in turnovers. When you look at that balance of you were composed and together versus being aggressive and maybe making plays, what did you think of that balance for last year's defense?
There's so many things that go into like those stats, right? And I think we were averaging maybe, 45 snaps a game, something like that. And if the defense is averaging 80 snaps a game, it's like twice as many reps. Maybe you're getting more disruption plays, but you're probably getting more big plays. So I think really what you're trying to do is just, are we playing good defense? I think, are we really, as opposed to the stats, the biggest stat that matters is obviously the score. That's how we win and lose. So stats are great. I think it's a great monitor for what you're doing. And so I look at those stats and say, all right, we have to turn the ball over. We have to attack them more with whatever we're doing. So we obviously want to have more of those plays, but also trying to be realistic. Like, are we just at least playing good defense? Like, are we doing what we want to do on the tape? Is it clean? I'd say that's probably one of the best compliments I've had in the last couple of days, just talking with my NFL guys that I know that have come back watching our tape here recently, getting our guys ready. They just keep saying like the tape is so clean, it's so clean, you know, and it's just, that means like you're operating at a high level on the field. And I think if you do that, you give yourself a chance to win.
Are you willing to give up any more big plays in the pursuit of more turnovers or more sacks or
Yeah.
anything like that, or do you not want?
I mean,
to do
I'm
that?
always looking for more sacks and more turnovers. I'm never telling us not to do that for sure. But I definitely don't want to give up touchdowns because that's the one that's going to be not good. So we're not playing conservative. We're not doing any of that stuff. We're trying to play the plays that are out there for sure. But we always are going to strive to try to get after the ball a little bit more, definitely.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Matt.